All right, Hutz, let's go through a couple of different goaltending situations here. Let's stop in every every conference final series. And I guess we can begin in Edmonton because Stuart Skinner has obviously become a focal point here. You talked a little bit about, his game mentally and how it seems to be in a good spot, but he's such a Jekyll and Hyde goalie, as you kind of said. What about his game on the physical side of it, stylistically, positionally? What changes when he's on versus when he's off?
I think chasing the game would be the main thing, right? So when I say chasing the game, I mean staying between our posts and not really chasing plays outside of our net that aren't going in the net. And that being said, it's a tricky thing to deal with. And something that holds a lot of goalies back is patience. And for Stuart Skinner, when he is at his best, he has his feet underneath him. He's not too wide. He's able to move, and he doesn't get too locked in on that first initial shot. And what I'm seeing right now is him managing his depth well in the crease. He's not getting too far out, being too aggressive. He's letting the game come to him. But it goes hand in hand with the way you defend. And I think this team is defending harder in the D zone, making the game a little more predictable for Skinner. And for him, it's been a tale of two tapes, right? You look at his numbers, obviously, early on. Right now, he's got a 902 in the playoffs. But in rounds 2 and 3, he's leading the way with a 936. So he's been good. And yes, Calvin Pickard has been in some of those games. But for him, it's early in the game, getting into that rhythm, getting the flow going. And then I think there's a confident Edmonton Oilers team that plays in front of him when he sees those first shots. So it's been fun to watch. So less is more with Stuart Skinner would be the best way that I could explain his game.
Now let's go to the crease down at the other end. Jake Oettinger. I mean, for whatever reason, these last couple of years against Edmonton, it has not been pretty, specifically games in Edmonton. When he's played a playoff game at Rogers Place the last 2 years, his save percentage craters to .848. As you look at the 6 goals the Oilers got in Game 3, any of the other goals in this series, have they figured anything out with Oettinger, or is it simply a product of he's facing so many quality looks, like eventually some are just going to go in?
I think it's a mix of both, right? I think there's some times you need saves. I thought early in that game, in the first, the Bouchard goal is one where he needs to save. It's a hard shot, but it's on the ice. He's a big guy at 6'6". He needs to make that save. But then again, you look at McDavid's goals, those are very good shots. Those are good goals. Hyman scores on, a breakaway and then another one, which is a partial breakaway where he gets it upstairs. I think just the Edmonton Oilers are doing a good job of getting the puck elevated against him, where he's a big guy. He seals the ice very well. And he's just got a hump to get over, too. This is another guy that has to exercise some demons to get back to where he needs to be. We think of the Dallas Stars, them in the conference finals, where they've been in the Stanley Cup finals. That was Anton Khudobin who got them there. So Jake Oettinger has to exercise some demons. We talk about Connor Hellebuck, having struggling in the earlier rounds. Jake Oettinger is not necessarily struggling, but you have to make big saves at big times. And yesterday, he didn't have that for his team.
Yeah, Pat, if you want to flash back up Ottinger's numbers, you see in rounds 1 and 2, like 911, 929 on the save percentage. And, you just kind of said, like, he's not really struggling. And I agree with that. Like, he's not playing poorly, even though you can sit and look at the 3 games against Edmonton here and be like, he's below an 890 save percentage in every single one of them. But when you're only facing 24 to 27 shots on goal, and again, a bunch of them are odd man rushes, Edmonton on the power play, whatever, like, your save percentage isn't going to look pretty.
No, it's not. And that being said, these are the trickiest games to play in, right? When you're not in a rhythm and you're not busy. And during my career, I always remember when I would have like 35 plus shots, my record was through the roof how much better I played. But as you experience, you gain more experience, you play more. Sometimes just when you don't get a lot of shots, you have to stay in the moment and be there. And again, he's only 26 years old. Like, I think the future is very bright for Jake Oettinger, but this is a lot to take on when you're playing against 2 of the best players in the world. And this is an opportunistic team. So that being said, he needs to make saves at big times. And I don't think right now he's getting that. But Dallas also has to do a better job of protecting him. It's not necessarily shot volume. And then we always talk about, as a goalie, I always joke around, like, you can't judge a game by a box score. So when you look at those stats and you're like, hey, he had a rough game, but then you actually see the chances and the goals against, you're like, wow, they're generating a lot of high-quality danger scoring chances. But when do you ever get to the Stanley Cup final and not say, wow, our goalie was very good in the conference final to get us there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a second straight season where, again, somehow after a great first 2 rounds, Ottinger's been the second best goalie in the Western Conference final. Let's go out east. What can you even say about Sergei Bobrovsky at this point? Because it could be he's on the brink of going to a 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. In round 2 against the Leafs, games 1 and 2, he gives up 4 goals in each of those. And then what does he do? 7 games since then, hasn't allowed more than 2 goals against in a game. Like, playoff Bob, like it's a real thing.
Yeah, it's almost early in the game for me. He has like a comforting factor to his team. And he lets his team, if they're not, if they don't start on time, he makes big saves. It's timely saves. Or if they do, you look at some of the other games where he doesn't get a lot of shots and then he makes a couple big blockbuster saves at the right time. And again, it's experience, it's preparation, it's his mentality, it's everything that Bob puts into the game. He is one of the best goalies to be around, the way he trains, his mental aspect. And they highlighted that early in the thing where they were trying to get to the net. It was on Hockey Night in Canada where he went over and he talked to the ref. And that isn't his usual demeanor. Normally he skates to the corner, he stays away from it, he stays in the moment. And something I remember playing against him a lot was whenever he would get scored on, he'd go back to the crease and he would kind of have a reset he would go through. You'd watch him physically do it. He was tap his post, put his glove and blocker on his pads and push his pads together. And he was just resetting himself because he doesn't let it get too high. He doesn't let it get too low. And that's what you're seeing right now is the maturity of the Florida Panthers. And I think with Sergei Bobrovsky as your leader, as your starting goalie, it just is a calmness throughout this room so they can get back to work, whether they score or they get scored on.
And then I guess the last spot we need to check in on is Freddie Anderson, Pyotr Kochetkov, and the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, Freddie Anderson was so good through those first two rounds, but now you almost look back at them and go, okay, was that just because Carolina was dominating games against teams that were inferior to them? But Anderson obviously struggled through games 1 and 2. They go to Kochetkov for game 3. The results aren't any better. I guess if they were to get bounced in this Eastern Conference final, moving forward, they just extended Anderson. Kochetkov's under contract. Is this a duo that's good enough to win? Like, do you think they should have a high level of belief in them?
I think so. I think there needs to be belief in them. I'm more worried about Carolina on the offensive front, having a star that can finish in big moments. But we've already touched on that. But for Freddie Anderson, he does have a little bit of a black cloud hanging over him playoff time. Yes, we can look at rounds 1 and 2. He was unbelievable. But if they are to lose out and get swept again, like another year, it's going to be another little bit of just a black mark on his resume come playoff time when he needs to be good. But I do feel like Kochetkov still has a high ceiling. He's a younger guy. He plays with a lot of energy. He plays with a lot of jam. My only concern with Freddie this time of year is we see it now. We've seen it with Hellebuck. We've seen it with, you need to have a little bit more athleticism. You need to, because there's more deflections, there's more secondary plays where that second save capability is higher. And I think with Kochetkov, he has that value. I just don't know if he's there yet. I think he needs a little bit of more games and a little bit, I guess maybe just more simmering in the NHL at this level. But that being said, I think Freddie's at a pretty good number for his age for next year. I think you have a pretty good duo, for years ahead here.
Yeah, again, and another thing too in the cap era, and this has always been something that's had me come to the defense of Edmonton's duo. Like Edmonton's duo makes $3.6 million against the cap, and they're signed for next year. And you look at Carolina now, $4.75 million for those two guys. Like you can build, and we've seen it in the past. You can talk about Edmonton getting to a cup final. You can talk about Colorado winning a few years ago with Darcy Kemper, even when he wasn't at his best. There is something to be said of like, just get yourself two solid goalies, pay them a decent amount, and spend that money on the team in front of them, and you could have good results.
You can, right? And having a veteran guy, even now you look at the Edmonton Oilers with Kelvin Pickard, they had trust in there. He went in, and yes, it doesn't necessarily fit the eye test when we talk about Kelvin Pickard's game and where he is. He's a little bit sloppy. I think if you just ran actual goalie drills and structure, he's clunky, he moves it, but he's a gamer. And that's what you need this time of year. You need guys that can stay with it, make timely saves, be in the moment. And then you have guys that are important in the locker room. So it's important to build around all those structures, and teams understand that. I feel like one of my biggest values when I played was being a good person. It's like there's no stat for that. There's no stat for being a good guy in the room, being a good person, whether it's how you communicate, what you do. So for Carolina, that is important, I think, moving forward, and spending that money in the right areas to make sure you're protected.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.